Welcome to Divcasts from University of Chicago Divinity School. For more of our podcasts and information about our terms of use, please see our website, divinity.uchicago.edu/podcasts.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Wednesday community lunch here at the Divinity School. Welcome to today's Wednesday lunch here at the Divinity School. I'm Karen Wine. I'm the Director of Communications and the organizer of this series, and it's lovely to see so many of you here. So before we get started, we're going to do our usual housekeeping. Our head chef for today is Casey. For cooking this meal, which, as you may not know, is cooked from scratch today in that little tiny kitchen. So I think this is a miracle. And we would appreciate it very much if you would clean up after yourselves. Are both these bowls okay for compost? So your bowls and your leftovers are good for the compost in the back. So as you're leaving, put your bowls in the compost. Put any trash you have in the trash. Put your silverware in a yellow soapy bag. And if you could take a sec to fold up your folding chair, that's also appreciated. Thank you. Do we have any community announcements today? Russell?
Oh, sure, yeah. There's a Martin Buber 101 tonight at 7 p.m. at Divinity House. Sam Shonkoff will be presenting. So.
Anyone else? Carrie, did you have anything you want to say?
I've been sending out a lot of emails about various and sundry things in addition to the newsletter. So just please pay attention to them. And I would just encourage you to also pay attention to your Grad Guide Weekly, which has a lot of events that are being sponsored by Graduate Student Affairs. Like next Wednesday, there's a workshop on converting your dissertation proposal into a grant proposal. Lots of really good resources for you like that. It'll conflict. Well, this is February. I'll talk about that later.
Everything
just pay attention to my emails. I'm not trying to fill your inbox yet, but there are lots of important things happening, and sometimes I may send an extra email just to reinforce the importance of it, or to be sure that it doesn't get lost in either my newsletter or other things. So pay attention to your emails. I have lots of people who've been met because they didn't read an email and therefore didn't see the opportunity that was in front of them. So
pay attention to my email. So if you're not on our weekly at the Divinity School email, see me afterwards, because every week I send out an email with all of our public events that are coming up, so that aggregates all of our conferences, lectures, workshops, 101s, not necessarily student service events, but anything public. So if you're not getting that, it's only once a week. I promise I'm going to spam you all the time, and I think it's extremely informative. So I also wanted to say there's a creamer on the back table for coffee if you need creamer with your coffee. And also if you could remember now to turn off your cell phone noise, that's very much appreciated. So before I introduce today's speaker, I want to let you know that we do have speakers for the rest of the quarter every Wednesday. You can sign up for the entire quarter. You can sign up week by week. Our speaker for next week is actually sitting right here. He's Dr. Petras, who's our liaison to the Student Resource Center.
Student counseling services.
And he's going to be speaking next week about how being smart makes you stupid. Did I get that right?
Yeah, close.
In a nutshell. So you definitely need to know about that. But our speaker for today is also right here. I'm going to introduce him very briefly, but I know he has a new position that he's going to have to speak to because it's not on my, it's a brand new position, so it's not on my introducing thing. So our speaker for today is Demond Drummer. He's actually an MA student here at the Divinity School, but he's also out in the world in a full-time position. He's also the founder of CoderSpace, which was one of the first recipients of the Community Programs Accelerator grants from the university here. So he's also, as I said on the map, right, he's also a founding member of the Resident Association of Greater Englewood and a longtime member of Chicago's Open Government Movement. In 2013, he spearheaded the crowdfunding and launch of Englewood Codes, which teaches local teens how to code, and CoderSpace, which is the program that just won that grant, grew out of that program. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Drummer to
Let me find it here. Is there something that should be happening on the AV? So no, thank you so much, Taryn, for the invitation to come speak at Wednesday lunch. I look out at the gathering and I see a bunch of familiar faces. Who's a first year in the program? I had the dubious distinction of being your classmate. I was in the class of Rosengarten. Because I've been here so long, I had the dubious distinction of being classmates with people who are on faculty, like Wesley. And so I've been in any and every master's program at the Divinity School, in any iteration thereof over the last 10 years. So I'm so happy to come back and talk about what I've been doing outside of being in the classroom to justify this extended tenure here at Swift Hall. It seems I've misinterpreted grossly this idea of a lifetime of learning. So thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'd like to give a shout out to the team at the Office of Civic Engagement, Shannon, Ryan, and Chaz. Raise your hand. I had this great pleasure of having two homes at the University of Chicago, Swift Hall and Civic Engagement. And that is a great way of explaining who I am. I hope to express some of that in the next few minutes. Okay, let's do this. Try this again. So for the next few minutes, I just want to talk about my story, CoderSpace, what it is, how we're going to do this, and how all of this relates to my studies here at Swift Hall. Those will be very preliminary reflections. There's still works in progress. You always have to put that disclaimer out there. So I came to Swift Hall in fall 2005, like 10 years ago. Half y'all were still in middle school. But I came here to look at the way that religion, particularly Christian religion, interacts with American politics. Because of that work, I took a leave of absence. I actually applied to this summer organizing boot camp for the progressive movement. It was actually during History of Christian Thought that I filled out my application to the new Organizing Institute training program, and was then selected by the Obama campaign in summer 2007 to join the primary campaign in South Carolina. There I was sent to rural South Carolina, Marion and Dillon County, and I was given a list of 18 names, and my job for the next 7 months was to grow that list to 8,000 names who would then mobilize their vote for Senator Obama for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States. I was living in two worlds. The Obama campaign then was the most sophisticated, the most technologically sophisticated campaign that we had seen in American politics. And yet I was in rural South Carolina where there was not a lot of internet. And so we had all this like online sign-up activity. I received 3 online sign-ups for my teams the entire 7 months I was in South Carolina. And 2 of those sign-ups were the same person. So, I was in this, so people were raising the banner of technology, but what I experienced was the deep power of organizing in one-to-one relationships and telling your story and working together to bring about a change in this political context. So they came back to Chicago and took a new Organizing Institute fellowship at a web firm to explore this intersection between organizing and technology. After I left South Carolina, I got a bunch of calls from my team leaders. I had a barber, a deputy sheriff, a Mary Kay lady who pretty much, she could have written the Obama campaign plan. Door-to-door house meetings, things like that. I had a young man who was in alternative school. He was one of my key leaders. And then a pastor, Reverend Kelty, who has since passed on. They would call me and say, hey, what's next with the campaign? And I'm like, you're not getting all these emails? There's like 30 emails that went out every day. You're not getting these emails. And the janitor, who was another team leader, he was a janitor, he said, I don't even have a computer at home. I barely know how to use a computer. And so I began to really ask this question, what does it mean when strong leaders and communities aren't connected to the web? And how can the web play a role in building stronger communities and stronger neighborhoods and stronger leaders? So I worked with List Chicago to craft this idea around tech organizing. UChicago is a neighborhood development intermediary. They support dozens of communities across the city of Chicago, local economic development, organizing, schools, all this stuff. And the idea was, how do we use technology in the organizing context to build strong leaders and stronger neighborhoods? And I did that work, crafted the plan, and then got hired by Teamwork Englewood to execute against that plan. And we did this thing called tech organizing and smart communities. So my job was to identify leaders in the Englewood neighborhood. And so by this time I had moved to Englewood. My job was to find leaders in the Englewood neighborhood. And instead of having some campaign agenda that I was hired to do, I had the pleasure and the privilege to just walk up to a strong leader in a school and say, I'm Devon Drummond, I'm an organizer, I'm here to support you to understand how can technology support the work that you do. I can offer trainings for you, I can offer trainings for you and your team, and we can work on this together to solve some of these challenges and answer some of these questions. So parent leaders quickly pulled me into the schools, and they said, if you teach Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and how to get a Gmail account, how to use Google Docs, that would be a great hook to bring parents into the school, because they'll come for the class and stay to volunteer, right? So that was the technology, the training. It wasn't even the technology, the training itself was a technology that brought parents into the schools. CPS has this website where you can check your students' grades online, check their attendance day by day. Right, no more hiding your progress report from your parents. You know, like your parents know your grades day by day. And so when I would go into schools, usually I'm only working with a parent. I don't know the school leadership. It's the parent who's scheduling the computer lab and, you know, paving the way for me to come in and recruits parents to come out. And so this is Dr. Garner. She pulled me into her office one day. She's the principal of Langford Academy. And she said, who are you? You walk around my school using my computers. Who are you? And I explained what I was doing with Monica Baker. And she just gave me a tip. She's like, you know, don't ever walk into somebody's school and not talk to the principal. Right? But this is the way I work. I only work through neighborhood leaders. Right? I don't know the police captain or the commander in the 7th District, but I know people who go to his DAC meetings. And I know people who have his ear. And that's what I did as an organizer. I just found the leaders and worked with them. But I was asking to use this lab, and she was somewhat resistant until I mentioned the fact that on top of Gmail and Microsoft Word, I'm going to train the parents on how to access the parent portal. And here she is teaching that class, right? She almost gave me the key to the computer lab after I said that. So this is a very exciting program that CPS is doing, and we have a citywide goal of making sure that every parent is on the parent portal. Another thing that I did was, so we're teaching parents basic digital literacy skills, and a few months in, we realized that we needed to teach the youth not just how to use email and be on Facebook, but how to code. You know, if the grown folks needed the basic digital literacy skills, the young people could build the apps and the tools that the adults use. And so this is me meeting with Ron Emanuel, talking about my vision for like a stronger tech base in Chicago. You see his face. This is the only picture I've seen him smiling. And I'm literally saying the best way for Chicago to stay competitive is to build a broad base of tech talent throughout the entire city. Not just in River North, but throughout the entire city. Humboldt Park, Lincoln Park, and Englewood. So we raised money on Kickstarter and launched this project called Englewood Codes. This is a picture of 25 young people using a lab at Kennedy King College. We spent 10 weeks learning basic HTML, which is the structure of websites, CSS, which is the style of websites. We use a design framework called Twitter Bootstrap to make the sites look beautiful. So you have to know how to read and write code to use Twitter Bootstrap. We also used GitHub, which is Google Docs for coders, and is the standard tool for any serious web developer today. And we had a blast. Before Englewood Codes, I asked the students, are you considering a career in technology? Now, these were students who expressed interest in learning how to code, but I asked them, are you interested in a career in technology? And 80% said they were not, and 20% said they were. And it was amazing. After 10 weeks, we see almost a direct flip in the interest in pursuing a technology career. And that was a really exciting metric. So that was summer 2013. In summer 2014, I took the four best students from that group of 25, and I told them that they were going to build a website for a local coffee shop in Englewood called Kusane Cafe. It's a nonprofit coffee shop. Kusane is Swahili for to gather, so it's a place where people can gather and build a stronger neighborhood and sip a latte. So the students designed a website for Kusane Cafe on their own from scratch. If you click on donate, you can make a donation to Kusana Cafe through Salesforce. You can book an event using Salesforce. And students integrated all this on the back end of the website. I do not know how to integrate Salesforce into a website, but I do know how to Google how to do that. And so if I spent a lot of time teaching and training in 2013, in 2014, I took the 4 best students and we worked together on how to learn without having somebody teach you. And so instead of saying, you know, how do I get this side nav bar instead of the extended nav bar because that's what the client wants, I said, I don't know. What might we Google? And so that's what we did. It was amazing, just the talent that is there. And, you know, I have never deployed a website for a client, but my 4 students did. And so that's what Englewood Codes means. I usually, this is where I get derailed and I start talking about this forever, but I'm going to keep going. But this is just really impressive. They took the design aesthetic of Kusana Cafe. The first question I had to answer was, why can't Kusana Cafe just use Facebook as their homepage on the internet? And after having a design thinking workshop with the Night News Lab, Kamara Brown said, because Facebook doesn't fit Kusana Cafe's brand identity. I said, there we are, right? Sounds good. So is that what we're going to do? Like, let's go. Let's build a website, right? So asking those tough questions and having that lingo really helps. So that's, so again, teaching parents basic skills, teaching young people deep tech skills. All while this is happening, we're engaging in a 18-month or 2-year land use planning process in Englewood. The city of Chicago owns 10,000 vacant lots throughout the city of Chicago, right? The city, as a corporation, owns 10,000 vacant lots in the city. These are lots where people were delinquent on taxes and the building got torn down and just revolves to the city. And so the question was, what do we do with all of these abandoned lots owned by the city? And we had a series of planning charrettes with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. And out of these planning charrettes, the Resident Association of Greater Englewood, which I'm a member of and a founding member of, came up with this idea. They said, you know, we know block club members and leaders and residents who would love to buy these lots from the city, but the current policy did not fit the use case of these residents. For example, there's this policy called the Adjacent Neighbor Land Acquisition Program. Has anybody heard of that? Adjacent Neighbor Land, what's the rule for the Adjacent Neighbor Land Acquisition Program? Okay, well, unfair, I'm sorry. Right, adjacent. You can buy a city-owned vacant lot if it's next door to your residence, right? But Isha Butler, the president of R.A.G.E, doesn't have a city-owned lot next door to her residence. She has a city-owned lot next door to the building across the street from her residence that she owns. She wants to own that lot. So we expanded that limiting criteria for the NLAP program to being, you can buy a lot on your block as long as you own property on that block. You don't have to live on the block. As long as you own property on that block, you can buy that city-owned vacant lot from the city. And you can buy that lot for $1. And so while R.A.G.E was doing this, driving this policy idea with the Department of Planning and Development, literally residents came up with this new policy. Department of Planning and Development at the City of Chicago turned it into legalese and then launched a new policy. And they released it on the city website, which we know what kind of result that would be. It's a confusing application. Download this PowerPoint and then go to the county to figure out what lots are vacant. It was crazy. And so being an organizer at Teamwork Englewood, I said, well, we've been doing technology here. I'm hanging out with these civic hackers downtown every Tuesday. Let's build a single website. It's called largelots.org. And there were literally 3 steps. 1, type in your address. It then zooms down to your block. That's where the little, you know, the blue tag is. And every green box is a city-owned vacant lot that's eligible to be applied for the $1 lot program. You then click on the lot and press apply, and then take a picture of your deed to confirm that you own property on the block, and then the city assesses it from there. You know, so I mean, it was a single, it wasn't even multiple page website, it was a single page website, and this made national news. But it was very interesting because there's this whole open government, open data movement going on, and you know, for years, you know, the list of city-owned vacant lots was one of the first data sets that the city of Chicago released. But all you can do is make a map with it. Look how bad this problem is. You know, this is terrible, all these lots. But this was a policy that made that data actionable. And so this was a policy solution and a technology solution that came from Englewood that is going to change Chicago. The city has since taken this to 3 other neighborhoods. And when the city adopted the policy, largelots.org is part of the policy. So the city is adopting technology that was driven by the people. And so that was a really exciting story. I mean, I get cynical sometimes, but Chicago is the city that works. When do we make it work, right? So again, teaching leaders in the neighborhood basic literacy skills, having a 60-year-old or a 70-year-old woman who's a block club leader use Google Calendars for her block club federation, and she's upset that nobody else is using it. Teaching parents how to use the parent portal, also how to write a resume using Microsoft Word, or use Google Docs to have your resume at any given time and share it with somebody, right? Teaching youth how to code and doing largelots.org. That is the broad category called civic tech. And the work that I've done in civic tech has expanded or exposed me to a number of opportunities. The one that just happened last week was being named Managing Director of the Smart Chicago Challenge. It's a comprehensive, unified effort to make Chicago the most dynamic digital city in America. Like, this is the Chicago Public Library taking its best models. They have cyber navigators, digital librarians that can train somebody on how to use Word or help somebody use an online database, a digital librarian. But only half the branch libraries in Chicago have one of these digital librarians. We want to take that to every branch library. And that costs like $1 million extra a year, so I have to help, raise that. After, like, come April, it's like all my responsibility. And we will raise it, we'll do it, because what's not to laugh about that? The Smart Chicago Collaborative has a website called WeConnectChicago.org. Every public computing center in Chicago can upload their profile. It's like Facebook for public computing centers, right? It's where residents can go to find where to get online and take a class for free. So you upload your profile, your location, your hours, and your curriculum schedule. I say, come on in, if you want to learn how to do a resume, we're doing that on Wednesday. But people can get online and find that information. And that's very important because expanding access is part of the goals of the SMART Challenge. List Chicago had this program that I talked about called Smart Communities, tech organizing, using technology in neighborhood development. How do we scale that from 5 neighborhoods to 20 neighborhoods that need this investment across the city? And World Business Chicago, the City of Chicago, and the MacArthur Foundation are strong partners of this effort. Again, this is Chicago coming together to make our city the most dynamic digital city in America. And somebody from Skotal is running that, so that's really exciting. Another opportunity, as if this wasn't enough, right? Is something that's really close to my heart, and it's really why I do what I do. And I call this now my sanity project, because you can talk high-level fundraising and strategy, but it's really about what happens on the ground, right? It's too early in my career to be all strategy. It's got to be tactical. And so the Community Programs Accelerator is this phenomenal concept, and Chaz does a great job of explaining that the reason why I signed up for this and even applied was because Chaz says the University of Chicago has a lot of value to bring to neighborhoods in the Mid-South, but the neighborhoods also have a lot of value to bring to the University of Chicago. And the Community Programs Accelerator is all about that, right? How can we use the infrastructure and the knowledge and expertise at the university to support initiatives in the neighborhoods? And then how can we learn from these initiatives in the neighborhoods to better inform our work? Now, this is a dialogue, not a monologue, not a let us, powerful institution, help the poor neighborhoods. This is a conversation, this is a community. And so that's why I signed up. And so I signed up and I applied with this concept called CoderSpace. It's pretty much Englewood Codes, but not for Englewood, it's for anybody. It's really for the South Side of the South. And it's based on a simple idea. The best way to keep Chicago competitive is to build a broad base of tech talent throughout the entire city. And, there's a lot of people in this work, but, one thing that doesn't exist is a single organization whose singular purpose is to teach young people how to code. We have people doing this, but they're also running a co-working space. We have this being a program within a larger organization. I've experienced that. But this is a big enough task, an important enough task to deserve its own organization. And that's what CoderSpace is. And I want to address with this work 3 problems in the field. I've been waiting to give this slide. I appreciate the opportunity at the University of Chicago to have a slide called Problems in the Field. So teaching youth to code, and particularly youth to code, has become a new thing. Has anybody heard of it? Code.org. It's become a thing, but there's some problems here. One, we underestimate the capacity of our young people to learn code. I was at a convention, not a convention, a training program, professional development program for youth programming. And I mentioned to somebody that I was teaching young people how to code, or wanted to. I didn't tell him I already did, but I told him I wanted to do that. And his response was, you know, these teens don't have the patience to learn code. Now, he actually runs a youth tech program. So, you know, we severely underestimate our youth. There are organizations that are doing great work that teach youth how to make a site on Wix or Weebly. These are templates. This is data entry. This is not a skill. So they're building beautiful websites, but if you use Squarespace, I'm sorry, that's not a skill. So we underestimate the ability of our youth to learn coding. And then if we underestimate our youth, we overpromise what we're teaching them. Build an app in a day, right? We taught 7-year-olds how to build an app in 1 day. No 7-year-old is learning how to build an app in 1 day. That's dishonest, and it does a lot of damage to the 7-year-old. And so we overpromise what we're going to be teaching the youth. And we also marginalize the youth in this tech space. Build a website to solve crime. Let's build an app to solve blight. Why is it that youth of color have to build technology tools to address problems in their community only, right? Why is that what we lead with? And so CoderSpace is organized, and the work of Englewood Codes was organized not to directly, you know, address these problems, but I was aware of these complications. So this is what CoderSpace does. We start with basic HTML, which is structure, and CSS, which is style. We add a little bit of JavaScript for enough functionality for interaction. Does anybody ever enter the password wrong? And then, right? Or it says, you know, this password is not strong enough, or UChicago, you must not use a dictionary word. That's JavaScript doing that. That's a website talking back to you. That's JavaScript. It makes the website come to life. PHP is a programming language that works with WordPress. WordPress is a website, I'm actually getting out of order. WordPress is a website framework that dynamically serves HTML, CSS, and JavaScript programmatically. I'll get into that later, or I won't. Bootstrap is a design framework, and all this can happen on GitHub where the code lives. So, you know, I was careful to throw WordPress in here because we're not leading with WordPress. We're not teaching kids to build a WordPress website. We're going to build a static site with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and Bootstrap. And then they're going to learn enough PHP to use WordPress as a back-end content management system. So the client can update the site without calling the kid. Because kids disappear during the school year. You know, it's hard to find them, they have tests in class, right? So the client wants to be able to update the site on their own without having to call the kids, so that's why we use WordPress as a back-end system. So we're not building WordPress sites. We're using WordPress as the back-end of the sites that kids have already built. Meanwhile, they're learning how to write code for the server. They're actually programming at that point, which is really exciting. This is how we intend to organize the summer program. There's going to be, it's an 8-week program during the summer. 24 students, 6 project teams, and 4 instructors. This is a snowflake. This comes from my Obama years, the organizing model, right? So there's a lead instructor who's responsible for the activities and oversight of 3 other instructors. Each instructor has 2 student leaders that's running a team of 3 other students, right? So this is a team-based, project-based model. Right? I mean, we're talking about levels of leadership all throughout. I mean, this is just responsibility. There is ownership over this space. I can't take full responsibility for this. During Englewood Codes, I had this idea we're going to teach kids to code classroom style, and we're going to spend the 5th week in the middle of the summer to do a team challenge. And we're going to build a website for the Englewood Arts Festival, right? And by week 2, my teaching fellow, who I thought was there to write curriculum and map my curriculum, something special, right? My curriculum to the core curriculum and Common Core Standards, rather. He ended up being my instructional coach and said, hey, Devon, this team model that you designed for week 5, you should bring that into week 2 and have the entire program be a team model because you're running around trying to help 25 kids. You're doing all the work and the kids aren't working enough, you know? And so at that point, you know, I was very comfortable because I know how to organize, I know how to run teams. So I only had 5 team leaders that I was talking to, you know? It's hey, Denasia, is your team, has everyone on your team met their deliverable for the hour before the lunch break? Like, you know, you can't leave for lunch until everyone on your team meets their deliverable. And so now she's sweating. When she's sweating, all her team peers are sweating too, right? So that's a team model in a nutshell. So it's team-based. This is the 4 students who built the website for Kusana Cafe. And it's project-based. You know, and so every hour, every day has a deliverable. Every week, we have a larger deliverable for that week. You know, you're going to have your own personal website by week 1. Right? You'll have a client website by week 8. Right? Every week has its own deliverable. And we're solving real-world business problems. We have 6 project teams. We're taking on 6 clients. One of them is going to be the Hyde Park Jazz Festival. Right? Nice. One of them will be CoderSpace. You know, I'm trying to get my dry cleaners, Taylor Wright, to join in too. But we're going to have 6 real-world clients. And so that means the students will be solving real-world business problems with code. It's completely in their capacity, and it's time to do this. And so I'm really excited about this work. So what does this have to do with Swift Hall? It's a very good question. I'm glad you asked. So I came to Swift Hall to look at the intersection of religion and American politics. And I came here looking for answers and just frankly found more questions, right? And one thing that has become clear to me is in my work is that as I became an organizer after leaving Swift Hall for that leave of absence that never ended, my question became more broad, not specifically how religion interacts with American politics, but how the thing that happens in religion, and at risk of oversimplifying, you know, who are we? How did we get here? Where are we going? Roughly, right? I mean, I know this is oversimplification. How are those questions answered in the civic context, right? And then how do I engage those answers? For example, in everything that a person says and does in Englewood, they're answering the question, who are we as a people, as a neighborhood, right? How did we get here? What's the story? The crack epidemic, right? The steel mills closed, right? Or we're just a mess and we're crazy and that's why our neighborhood is so screwed up, right? How did we get here and where are we going? What can we hope for, right? Some folks have decided that we can hope for nothing, right? Some, like Aisha Butler and her husband Antoine Butler, believe that there is something to hope for. So their actions reflect that belief, right? So I've watched for how people answer those questions in their words and deeds. I want to give one example of how I'm doing this in the work, because again, the work that I'm doing is not unique to the work that I'm doing. Like, other people are doing this work. I'm not the only one doing this work. But I do think, because I've studied at Swift Hall, I'm probably the only person in this space that is actively paying attention to the narratives and the stories that we tell about ourselves as a city, as a community, and acting in a way that acknowledges those old-time narratives and brings a new interpretation of the current situation. And so, for example, when we were talking about Englewood Codes, I led with the line, you know, the best way to keep Chicago competitive is to build a broad-based tech talent throughout the entire city, right? Somewhere down the line, somebody got their hands on that and posted on a city website that Teamwork Englewood is teaching at-risk youth how to code. Right, you saw the move there? And so the story that I'm trying to tell is that young people are part of the future of Chicago's economic development, and they're necessary to it. You know, the story that the other person was trying to tell in the mayor's office was, you know, this wasn't the mayor, this was like a staff person, was saying, you know, these kids, you know, need help, they're at risk, they're the problem, right? The story that I tell to reframe how we look at our young people is the story that changed my life. Summer 2011 was the first year that I tried to teach young people how to code. I told After School Matters I'm going to teach kids how to code. I didn't know how to code at that point. I learned and I did it. That was summer 2011. We had a blast. Summer 2012, I didn't do the program again. I was busy doing the land use plan. I was busy. We were over capacity. But that summer of 2012, a young man named Donnell came into my office with 5 of his friends, and he asked about the program where kids can learn how to build websites. We had not advertised the program in a full year, and yet he walked into my office asking for the program where he could learn how to build a website. I did not have the heart to send him away, so I pulled out some used laptop computers, you know, the hand-me-down corporate laptop computers that we did, with Windows like 97 on them. Went into the conference room, the boardroom of my organization, and did a crash course in HTML and CSS. 5 minutes into my crash course, Donnell looked up from his laptop computer and asked a question that changed my life. He asked, can I do this as a job? Right? That's the story that I tell, for the first years, to refigure how we see young black boys in the city of Chicago. to really understand, to tell a new story of the youth of color, the black and brown kids in Chicago that we have written off, marginalized, and just like, given away to the prison system, to reconstruct a new narrative that taps into their potential, taps into their talent, and affirms their agency in building a better Chicago. And so ideas matter, but they are not all that matter. And sometimes the best, most powerful argument is action. So that's what I try to do with my studies here at Swift Hall, out there in Englewood, and now in Chicago. Thank you.
Do you have time for Q&A?
I do.
Okay.
I'm doing this meeting, so there you go.
We have some time for Q&A.
Well, first off, when are you going to apply for the PhD program? And if you stick around for all the programs. Second, I was just curious about the particulars on CoderSpace. Like, how do the students sign up? Are they charged for it?
CoderSpace is going to be free. When I launched the website, which is, Shannon keeps saying, dude, how's the CoderSpace going to have a website yet? That was the last thing literally on my mind. Right? We have to get this instructional team, but an application will go out after CPS spring break. And they'll be able to sign up online, and we interview every student. And this is how the interview goes. I say, hey, what do you want to do with your life? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? Let's find it. Let's code these answers into like a simple website. So what's your favorite color? Green. Let's change the background to green. And then I'm watching for the eyes. And if their eyes light up, I offer them a seat, in the program. If they look bored, I said, would you want to do this? They're like, no. That's fine. But I just watch for the eyes. Somebody said, how do you, somebody said, oh, they're self-selected. Yes. We look for interest. And we've had students that there's a full range of academic performance. Englewood Codes had students from Harper High School and from Linwood, which is a premier STEM school. Harper was featured on NPR, right, as a really poor performing school. And so we had the full range. Team leaders reflected the full range of students going to the full range of CPS schools, so it was really exciting. So that's how we do it. It's going to be an online application. We interview every student who applies and go from there. Yes. And it's free. I'm sorry. It's free.
Thank you. There's so much I would like to comment on. Very impressive programming, all of them. You had earlier on, you had mentioned a design thinking workshop that the students participated in, and I have a wee bit of experience with design thinking framework, and I'm wondering how that's been incorporated maybe in other ways, if it has, maybe it hasn't, but if that framework has been used to even just think about possible solutions to problems, business problems of setting together a program, if it's been how it's been applied to them.
That's a great question. We did a design thinking seminar, a workshop for 3 hours. I want to do more of that, so, follow me on Twitter. But no, I'll get your information because I would love to talk to you about that. It's about empathy and all these things, how to not build a site for yourself, which they'll be doing for the first 4 weeks, but how to build a site for somebody else. The students hated the Kusani Cafe website, right? It was like, there's no color or what, but that's what the client wanted, right? I mean, it's listening to the client. And Kamara Brown, who's a junior at Linwood, was just amazing. The Kusani Cafe sent a list of sites that they liked, and she took it upon herself to sit with the client and say, what exactly do you like about the sites? These are very different sites. What do they have in common that you like? And then she was able to set the design direction of the project. They nailed it. I've never seen that happen before. And I used to work at a web firm. So I definitely want to bring that skill out. She did not know she had that skill. She didn't know there was a thing called design thinking and project management, right? So that's what's really exciting about this work.
Are businesses getting these websites paying for this service?
It's going to be free. It's going to be free. Because it's an enormous risk to have teenagers looking just ask the Fort Barber College. But it's an enormous risk, and because they're going to have to invest more time than they would expect. So it's going to be a very careful onboarding process. They're going to meet with the students every week. These are things that small clients tend not to do. There's this middle, but to your point, there's a middle market here. It was for companies who can afford several $1,000s for a website. Then the small businesses that don't have the money for that, but don't have the time to do it themselves on Squarespace or WordPress. So they can get a site for less than $1,000. They do have a budget for a site for less than $1,000, and that's a lot of money for a teenager. Right? This is a bunch of money. That's a bunch of money for 5 or 4 teenagers, right? So we really want to address that middle market. So we want to get our portfolio up at CoderSpace free, and then companies can start paying for the work moving forward in our school year building.
I mean, I know that large lots site, right? So did the city, has there been any payback for that, or is this all, to this date, is it like resources sort of that you are cultivating, and is there anything coming back to you for all these resources that you are putting out there?
Well, one, I don't own property in Englewood. I don't own property in Englewood, so I was like, they're like, oh, good, you can buy a dollar lot. I'm like, I can't buy a dollar lot. What do I just do? Like, why? But no. So this was funded by the UChicago. I did not hand code this. I did not build this site. I worked with a developer to build this site. Right? So the developer got paid. Part of my job was to find these. This was part of my job, right? And so the payback is the fact that there's a story, that there's a policy solution and a technology solution that came from the Englewood neighborhood, right? That's the payback, And so Code for America flew me to San Francisco to talk about this. And so, I put you up in a hotel, it's been fun, but the payback is the story because it tells a new story about Englewood and its role in the city of Chicago. Yes.
I think this is great, and I think that the CoderSpace is such an important program. I'm so glad you're doing it. I hope it gets replicated in other cities. One thing you mentioned at one point, young black boys in Chicago, and I mean, gender issues.
Yes.
Could you say a few words about that?
Yes, I'm going to come to the slide. One thing that we are going to do, that we've done deliberately, is that half of my class has always been with girls. Right? I've made, if I want to be on the justice tip, 70% of my class would be, teenage girls. But we've made sure it's a 50-50 split. We deliberately architected that. You do not get Englewood Codes without having half the girls and half the boys being, half the class be girls and boys. That's the mix. Gender is number one in my mind. It has not been my experience that girls aren't interested in coding or can't code. Matter of fact, they're the sharpest ones in the room. But there's a dynamic here, and I want to acknowledge this, that it's actually easier to recruit girls to the program than it is boys. Because by 14, they've already been counted out. They're very hard to find. And so I actually have to work overtime to get 50% of the program to boys. So that's actually the hard work, and so that's just a reality. And so there's this great program called Black Girls Code, and that has to happen. But in the back of my mind, I'm always concerned with the fact that when I look at the applications, the majority are coming from girls. So I like the 50-50 split. We want more young women represented in tech. We also need more boys in programs like this as well. So those are the two prices. You see that? There's a lot going on there. So we do 50-50 and call it even.
Running a question, do you have mixed gender in the teams?
Yes. We choose the team leaders, and the team leaders hire their teams, just like on the playground. And which is great, because what happens when the team isn't performing? The instructors say, "This is your team. You hired your team. You own this." And so it's great. So they own it. So they have to deliver it. And so it's great to see the team dynamics. That's one thing I love to watch, and it's really exciting. So they own that team decision that they made. I mean, I wasn't even in the room when they picked their team. Yes.
You mentioned your work with the parents in terms of Chicago Public Schools. Could you say a little bit about how you assess where we currently are in the CPS system vis-a-vis teaching of computer literacy, vis-a-vis where we need to be in terms of should every kid have a Chromebook? And where are we, and how can your organizations, in fact, spur the school system to charge up in order to meet the challenge that you set for the city?
That's my charge for the next few weeks. We don't create the most dynamic digital city in America without Chicago Public Schools being in the picture. Secondly, and I ran into the network chief for the Englewood network for Chicago Public Schools, and I think it was December 8th through 13th was Computer Science Awareness Week. And I asked her, how many of your schools, she has about 20 to 30 schools in her network, how many of your schools did some programming around Computer Science Education Week? You know, code classes, hour of code programming. She said 2. 2 of 20 on a most optimistically, right? And because it's because these resources and these opportunities tend to go to schools that are level 1. The best performing schools get the opportunity to teach their students code. I had a principal on the west side reach out to me and say, I want to bring you to my school because I don't get the resources to teach my kids code on level 2, on level 3. You know, and so I do believe that you should learn how to code. You should have that opportunity no matter what school you go to. CPS also agrees, but we have to raise the resources to do that. The great thing is that they have staff that are looking at this, and that principal who reached out to me is now at the headquarters working on this situation. So it's really exciting. So we're at a serious, significant moment. And so to your point, to your question, we have a lot of work to do in that space, a lot of work. Because schools also have to teach math. We have to do that better, you know? And so, and the University of Chicago just put out a report. Am I over time here?
No, you're good.
This is, okay. The University of Chicago just put out a report that the civic engagement staff shared with me, that the challenge for teaching code in schools is the fact that you need, one, somebody who knows the subject matter and knows how to teach, right? And if you know the subject matter, you're going to go work at Google. You know, and then and if you know the subject matter and want to teach, you have to know how to teach. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. So that's the challenge there. So we have a lot of work to do in this country to stay ahead. I mean, journalists have said we're losing our national security edge on this matter. We see it. We see like every day there's like a new threat to like, you know, being hacked or whatnot. So this is an economic issue, national security issue, everything. So that's the challenge, actually. Thank you.
We thank you for listening to or viewing our podcast. For more information and for other podcasts, please see our website, divinity.uchicago.edu/podcasts. Copyright, the University of Chicago Divinity School.